Hello and welcome to another episode of Gaming at the Round Table, brought to you by Alanice Media with Maverick, Crystal, and myself, Jojo. Today we're going to kind of go over how technology or has technology made gaming easier. And there's a few different ways to kind of look at it, but the way I'm going to kind of segue into it is a key time when there was kind of a shift off of, because I don't think you can make the argument without stating like the shift from campaign driven games to co-op gaming, because I think it overlaps and it kind of shows you when there was a shift in it. Because games were initially designed to have like the campaign and the story. So everything was based solely around that. So it was get from the beginning of the game to the end of said story, whether you were playing Mario, Sonic, it didn't matter the type of game. You're always trying to figure out the story and get to the end of it. So the biggest shift from story, and I'm air quoting story, was in the early 2000s with games like World of Warcraft, which being massive online.
Mm.
And then you have Halo, which also went from being solely on the Xbox to having online capabilities. So you had Xbox Live, which went active in 2002, based on the date that I'm looking at. So if you look at that time frame, you realize, okay, well, you got the game that you got. Now, when you go to online, things have to change because again you have online capabilities, and that kind of pushes into a lot of the newer and the changing of like, do we focus on the story or do we focus on multiplayer and what that means. And I think that kind of shifted how hard or how much people even focus on the story, because if they're not really focused on the story, does the game really need to be hard? So that's kind of how I wanted to like start that and say, would it be because of that, or was that just a side effect of that change? As far as like the difficulty changing based on if it's campaign driven or multiplayer driven.
So that's can of worms, I think. So I think this will be
Surprise, gotcha.
one of our official like disagreements here. I don't think that the shift to online multiplayer was the biggest change in difficulty for gaming. But I do agree with the assertion that there was definitely a huge shift in focus on should this game even be difficult
Hmm.
versus should it. That started where we're at now, and it's slippery slope of how do we keep players engaged, how do we keep this fun. And nowadays, if you jump to the year 2025, most companies are asking, how can we bleed these suckers dry? I mean, keep people playing, right? But I do agree that was a huge shift in the gaming mindset, especially for the companies making the games, of how do we make this fun? I think that warped over time to something evil almost. But yeah, so difficulty, I can see that part, right? Like difficulty was no longer the focus. It was how do you keep many people engaged for as long as possible? And that doesn't always mean difficult. In fact, often it means the opposite. So that's a really good point. Difficulty, I think, changed a lot, or the most, and this is my counter argument. I think the most significant change towards easier games, because the question is, has technology made gaming easier? My
But
answer
that's,
is
yeah, that's
yes.
why I wanted to focus on the multiplayer aspect of it, because I think when it did that, the idea of the game being hard became how can you connect people,
Yeah.
not necessarily how can you make this game different. And it was more of like the overall, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it where it's the construct of it is based on, hey, is this a game to play because again story, or is this a game to play because you want people to engage each other? So should it be difficult to learn it, or should it be easy to learn it? And the availability of, this is going to make me sound old, internet, I think changed how people started making the difficulty of it because you have all this other added information. Chris, you were going to say something?
Yeah, the internet, I feel like, changed a lot of things for gaming specifically, because something that we mentioned in a prior podcast, when I was doing a show and tell of like all the old stuff my parents had, I showed a piece of paper that had codes written on it. Because back in my day, you had to figure out games and you had to write things down and you had to make a notebook, essentially, if you didn't have the Game Informer magazine, right? So nowadays, technology makes it easier because all I have to do when I'm stuck on a puzzle is Google it. There's at least 100 different videos of tutorials or written tutorials. I can find it in multiple different ways, you know? So the internet specifically made gaming a lot easier. But that's the internet specifically for puzzle solving. Co-op in general, I don't know how I feel on that one.
This is such a broad topic, and this is one of my favorite podcast topics we've come up with is, has technology made gaming better or easier?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I love this topic is because even if you have an instinctual response, yes or no, there are so many facets to the question. Even just trying to stick on, say, multiplayer, like Joe mentioned earlier. Well, yeah, that was true until we got to more modern eras when companies realized one way to keep people playing longer is to just introduce variability. And how do you introduce variability? You have them fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
Most major franchises that are on... I is smart, okay? Stop it. I need help. Most major franchises that are making money right now are reliant heavily on PvP of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an argument could be made that part of what makes many games very difficult is the fact that there are humans kicking your butt on the other side of the world or computer screen.
Well, there's another argument to make towards that as well, right? So now you're in a PvP setting. You're playing against other people. Well, guess what other technology exists? Cronus. So now people can cheat with technology. And cheat, right? I think it's cheating. Like full out, I think it's
that's clear as day cheating.
Yes, yeah. And
by definition.
Yeah.
Right.
To offer the same, for the people that don't think it's cheating, first of all, you're wrong. And second of all, cheating one definition that I think works in almost all situations is if the expectation is that everyone's supposed to be using the same tool set and you're using additional tool sets, you're cheating.
Yeah.
You're not being clever. You're just cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cronus is a good example. So the games aren't designed with that in mind, right? Otherwise, they just build it into the game. There you go.
Well, actually, further again, this is why a lot of the gaming consoles are starting to ban those particular things. There's a reason why Cronus are not allowed in high-end competitions that they have. Like, obviously, it's cheating. It's just people are gonna people, I guess.
I think one of the earliest examples of that was something called Game Shark, which was something designed for Game Boys. And I'm talking the old, it looked like a brick Game Boy and it was gray and you didn't have any color. So what would happen...
cross console? Sorry, but...
They had different versions of it after...
Okay.
I think the original one was on Game Boy, and then there was one that came out for Sega and other variations of it.
That's the one I was thinking of when you said it.
But the example I'm going to use is Pokemon when it first came out. The original, red and blue. For anybody that actually is old enough to know that, but the original one was red and blue. So what would happen is you would pick your Pokemon, you would train him, and then you could hook your Game Boy to somebody else's, and you can battle each other. Now with the Game Shark, you could make your Pokemon cracked. He could be level 99 Charizard, and then you hook up to play somebody else, and you're just wiping everybody because you had that unfair advantage of getting your Pokemon to an unnatural level or to a level at a very, very fast pace. So when you're playing certain difficulty levels, you would just blow everything out of the water.
Right.
And I think that started the idea of that you, not the idea, but that you could change the technology and the mechanics. So that was another, again, technology jump that allowed you to change the games that you were playing.
It's kind of like cybersecurity, right? You're always in this back and forth between the tech you evolve to secure something versus the creativity and tech available that can overdo it, right? And it's not just cybersecurity. All of life is like this, right? So at first there were sticks, and then there were, like bows. Okay, that's a significant advantage. Then you had like crossbows and guns, and then okay, do you even need armor anymore? Because a gun's going to go right through it. Who cares? And so on. And I think the gaming industry is no different in that regard, especially when you're talking about cheating or hacking into game files and stuff like that. It's always going to happen. We're veering into many other topics, which are tangential. Don't get me wrong, they're definitely related. But I'd like to take us a little bit further away, close to the topic, right? Which is like, has technology made games easier? And you guys are talking about how we've made it easier to cheat. I would go a step further and say a lot of good has come from peripheral accessories for people with disabilities or limitations of some kind. Many games nowadays come with both in-game and out-of-game options. In-game classic setting I'm sure you guys have run across is colorblind mode.
Mm-hmm.
So there are settings in most AAA titles and many non-AAA titles that allow you to adjust for stuff like that. Out-of-game mode, there are people like our cousin. She doesn't have a hand unless she got one and I didn't know about it. There are many accessories that, well, it's possible, right? There are many accessories for people with disabilities now to allow them to enjoy these games in a way that's actually practical.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, late 80s, early 90s,
yeah, you got
good look using a controller with one hand. Like it was going to be rough. They have all sorts of stuff now that really opens the gate for more and more people to actually meaningfully participate in gaming. I think that's wonderful and has made gaming easier. Maybe the game itself is just as difficult, but people who couldn't even play that game are now able to play these games. And that's wonderful. Sorry if you can hear or see my dog in the background. I'm her Thunder Buddy today. So yeah, I wanted to kind of take what you guys were saying and apply it on the positive side, right? There are all of those extra things we can use to cheat, but we can also use them to better the world.
Yeah, I'm going to use that in two ways. One, I know of paraplegics that are actually playing games just with their head at a very high level, to the point where they compete with other people, not necessarily on the same level, but enough to where you wouldn't notice if they were playing with a controller or not. And they're really, really good at it. There's some big streamers, I can't name them off the top of my head, but they play literally with just their head. And I think that's what you're saying as far as like technology helping in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
And just moving things forward. And then there's, again, I'm going to keep playing the devil's advocate for today. But like if you look at Fortnite and those that have either hearing impairments and things like that, where you can turn that on in Fortnite and see people's footprints because it's supposed to be a visual cue to those that may be hearing impaired, to where now pretty much everybody uses it. So when they're playing, they see those little feet and they go, okay, there's somebody to my left. Whereas when technology was making advancements, it was you had hit markers. So you could see, or like you would get a haptic feedback.
Right.
Yeah. Or an arrow that would kind of let you know, okay, something's coming from your left, your right, behind, forward, whatever. And that's, again, technology that there's always someone looking for a loophole, but it's intended to help those that can't do.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily be fully deaf to feel like it's a significant improvement in usability. So I play on a TV, not a monitor, when I do play most games, Fortnite included. And I lost a lot of hearing between the airplanes and the motorcycle and just being dumb and blasting music in my ears. Like, I lost a lot of hearing. I am not deaf in either ear that I am aware of, but it's hard for me to talk to people and hear the video game at the same time. And that's a sign of hearing loss. So in games where they have those markers, it helps me tremendously, because oftentimes I'd have to turn the game volume so far down that I can't really use it to my advantage in order to play with my wife or my friends, so I can hear them speaking and not be like, what, every 3 seconds. I have to basically forego game audio. And this has been the case for me for many years. I remember doing raids in Final Fantasy 14, and my group, some of whom might be listening to this podcast, would be like, yeah, you just wait for the little bell ding, and that's when you know this big attack is coming. And I'm like, no, I don't. I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah, that's when I found out he didn't listen to any audio when we were doing Final Fantasy, and I was like, how? Because I do everything based on the cues from the game, because a lot of the game gave, like he mentioned, we'll say bell, right? And then okay, bell happened. I got 2 seconds to move across the screen. And he would just be like, oh, team's moving, let's go. Like, what?
So there are cues that you could pick up on, and the developers, thankfully,
Visual
oftentimes, and yeah, exactly.
A lot of times, yeah.
They include multiple aspects into their games, kind of almost understanding that some people aren't going to rely solely on visuals or solely on audio or that kind of stuff. And I think Final Fantasy is another game that has a lot of settings for colorblind people. So mini games combine both that kind of accessibility controls, is what I'll call it, with graphic controls. And I loved playing games that had like giant AoE, Genshin Impact, for example. If you tried to play it on a phone, there were like low settings. And I would do that because it allowed me to see things more clearly in the low graphics setting. And so that kind of technology advanced, and it's mainly intended for people with toasters and potatoes that they're playing on. But it makes the game easier in many ways. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I almost always shut off like severe rumble in a game. I forget what they call it.
The vibration.
Yeah, like if vibration on hit, I'm like, absolutely not. No. Thank you very much. Because it distracts me and all that. And the game gets easier because I'm taking advantage of accessibility controls. So it's not even a disability in that case. It's more like I prefer it because it's less distracting. All right. So accessibility aside, there are technological leaps that we've kind of hinted at and talked mainly about the hardware side. But I think there's this huge broad stroke that we could cover about learning from the past and player feedback. Either it's like two huge branches of the conversation: player feedback on your own long hosted game, which we'll talk about next, and then just straight up learning from the past. We've learned that most players like mini maps. Most players like the ability to tell, hey, if you're on floor 1 and there are 5 freaking floors to this garage, I would like the ability to see which floor the objective is on and not just it's down. Some games do that for immersion, and those games are dumb. But like
Not
most
necessarily.
players,
It's just
I'm
not your
obviously,
cup of tea.
yes, it's not my cup of tea because it's a bad cup of tea. Okay. Biased opinion aside, many games have been able to take the learning and the experiences that they've had over the course of decades, because most people that make games have, played games, and apply it to more modern games. We have a huge list of stuff that we could rattle off, but I feel like I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to let someone else.
I want to mention, because it kind of goes hand in hand with what you've been saying, is learning from the past and then changing the overall topic of it, like making games easier, and the fact that now games give you choices. I don't know if Crystal wants to take it and talk about it.
Okay, I was going a completely different direction.
Okay. Well, it's that modern games have pretty much the options to make it easy, medium, or hard, or nightmare mode, they have some games. I think Diablo has at least 6 different difficulty levels.
My goodness.
I think it's 6. It may be more. But I know that there's other games.
2 sentences, sorry. Baldur's Gate 3 is fantastic, and many others are, that use a custom. So you could choose the base setting like you're talking about, and even layer it.
I didn't know that.
But that's where they're learning from past experiences. And they're kind of making up for the fact that some things may be more difficult for others, in the sense that some gamers really like games, but they're a little bit on the older side, myself included, where we're not as quick as we used to be. So playing certain games can become extremely frustrating to the point where it's not necessarily enjoyable, but maybe you like the franchise as a whole because it's been around long enough. But again, mechanically, it's become difficult for you. And I have friends that aren't even old, and I'm air quoting that, and they have arthritis or things like that. So they're not as quick with their fingers. So them trying to play, say, an action game, they can kind of feel like it's just too much for them. But again, they like the game, they like gaming. So having that choice and customization that you were mentioning, I think it makes it not easier, but more accessible, like you were saying before.
Yeah, and you can use it to play it easier, but the reality is, I feel like a lot of players that I see, and perhaps we'll get some comments on social media over this hot take, bad take, whatever. Every time I see someone say something like, the game's not fun unless it's really hard. You'll see that a lot on like Souls game commentary, roguelike commentary, difficult strategy games that have like super duper hell mode, right? And okay, that's fun for you. But the reality is, it's not fun or even possible for most,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise that would be normal. That would be
Mhm.
the average setting. There's a
They call
reason
it the
those.
learning curve if you're
Right, exactly.
speaking
Like,
school speak.
so good for you. You're amazing. You've got awesome twitch reflexes. Like, you're in tune with the machine.
You don't touch
Great.
grass. Okay.
Oh, she went a step further.
Ooh.
That's great for you. But the reality is, even from a business perspective, the people that made Dark Souls or made any traditionally considered hard game, Doc's losing her mind. They want to make money, and you don't make money by selling to the 200 best players in the world, and then that's all that matters because it's just a passion project. No, it's not. They're making money.
So, on that note of making money off of the player base, the fact that they take feedback in a lot of the live service games, that's the direction I wanted to go, makes a huge difference. So, a prime example that I want to make that sort of breaks my heart is that when I first originally played Genshin Impact, I played it with no layering maps. I played it with no real treasure compass. It would just show you like a general direction. Or no, it didn't even show you a general direction. It just showed you like
An
there's
area.
like a circle around you and then a line that went in a direction. That's it. That's all you got. And I 100%ed my Genshin that way. And we're talking Sumeru, and like for those who play Genshin, they'll understand. Okay, a lot of the deep areas. Now they've listened to player feedback on how difficult all those things were, and they made it to where there's a treasure compass that shows you exactly where the treasure is, what layer of the map it is, which by the way, they have layered maps now. Like you know you need to go up or down or left or right, or if it's in the secret like it's absolutely insane how different the game is. And then take it a step further. Now you have games releasing after Genshin Impact has implemented these things, and they're releasing with these things already
In the
implemented into
same
their
genre.
games.
Right.
Right, in the same genres, because they see what Genshin has been through. So another prime example would be Wuthering Waves. They came out with their game following suit with Genshin in a lot of ways, but better because they came out with these things already implemented. So it makes a huge difference on their game now compared to where Genshin started, right?
Yeah. There, like I said at the start, there's so many aspects to this conversation, and we're not going to be able to touch them all. So what I'd like to do is list off a couple of the bullet points we had, and just make sure we've at least touched on some of these things, because I love this topic and I want to give it as much justice as we can. So combat mechanics have evolved over time to make games easier and, in my opinion, more fun. So aim assist with controllers has become an art at this point. to where you can look up YouTube videos per game that you play. And some YouTuber will be like, well, on this game, you'll notice that there's a slight pull if someone's moving left and right. And depending on if your controller is sensing input, you'll get a little bit of aim assist. But if there is no input, you won't, or vice. Right. It's specific to every game. So aim assist has been a huge leap forward to where now players, there are differences. We've talked about them. But players can more realistically play a game with computer players and console players in the same lobbies and still have fun. I do think that there's a competitive aspect, like upper echelon, true PvP that isn't there, but it's much better. I can play with my friends and they don't feel like I'm keyboard turning on a controller.
I do want to point out, he's talking about the casual gamer, okay? Because
Right.
a lot of high-end gamers or like competitive gamers will turn aim assist off. But the casual gamer loves aim assist, okay? Let's be real here.
I'm talking about the masses.
Right.
Yes, that is a great clarification. That technology has developed over many games, many years, decades. Save and memory limitations on consoles, huge. Like, you don't have to beat the game
You know,
today.
Yeah.
Right? So that has made games easier for sure, because you don't have to sit there and put toothpicks on your eyes and go, all right, today's the day. We're doing it. Right? You can save, and you can save in most games. The only reason you can't save is because it's part of the game design that they want you to save at certain points. But even then, now most games that are like that still have autosave.
Autosave, yep.
You know, you play Baldur's Gate 3 and you'll be like, oh, it just auto-saved. We're probably going to fight something. So limitations on raw physical memory have improved gaming's experience, and consequently, the games are easier because you don't have to blast through them in one day.
Yeah.
Another one we had was AI enemies can literally adapt to your behavior now. I had a couple examples that I looked up. Let me find them. Mario Kart, when you're in last place, this is a classic example. If anyone's ever been like, I swear to goodness that when I'm in first, someone always gets a blue shell, and they're like in 8th or 12th or whatever the last place is. You're correct. That's literally designed into the AI. So all your suspicions confirmed. But it's great for the game. Another example is Resident Evil 4 actually has an in-game performance scale, 1 to 10, whatever. Details aside, if you're getting wrecked, they reduce the spawn rate of the zombies. And if you're just absolutely steamrolling them, they go, okay, increase the spawn rate, increase the aggression of the enemy. So that kind of stuff is possible via technology that has evolved over time. Really beautiful stuff there. Another one is the age of information. Crystal kind of touched on this.
Google.
Now you can Google or Bing or whatever, instead of having to go buy the Game Informer magazine or whatever magazine you could find. And the breadth of information, I feel it's almost obvious, but I want to highlight it. Even if you could buy strategy guides in the past, Prisma, Prima, Game Informer, like there were a handful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we ignore AI, there are still dozens of online reputable guides that will have different information. Just the wealth of it's global knowledge now that's at your fingertips. And so many more people play games. That's a whole societal conversation. So information access makes games easier, period. Hopefully you guys are looking at the same list I am.
Yes.
And I get poked and prodded about how often I talk. So you guys take it
We're
away.
just letting
We've got
him
a couple
run with
more.
it. There was checkpoints, better control. The better controls we've touched on, and the fact that the inputs are completely different. That, and if you look at a lot of controllers now compared to, say, the original, I'm going to use the N64, where you had the joystick in the middle, the buttons on the side, and then the bumpers on the back. Now you have pro levels, and I'm air quoting for those that can't see it, that have extra paddles, extra added button layering, customization layouts. Because before, wherever the X was, wherever the Y was, that's the only place it could be. As technology advanced, they allowed you to change the layup. If you like an inverted stick, you had the choice to do so. I don't know how you do that.
Further back, right? Ergonomics of the controller.
Mm-hmm.
hold a Nintendo, like OG Nintendo controller, and tell me that's comfortable.
That's
The little
fine.
old gray one that was like this big.
They were good for my little
it was
hands.
awful.
Well, I got munchkin hands, so for me, I was fine. But for people with larger hands, like their thumbs are literally overlapping.
Yeah.
But even say for kids, for example, you can buy kid-sized controllers
Yep.
for whatever system that you play on. So that way, when you have smaller kids, which is one reason why my godson steamrolls everybody in our house, because when he was small, that's what we got him. So he started figuring out games really, really fast because everything was to his size. So that was a really good one, which again falls under the accessibility, better controls. The one thing I wanted to mention when we mentioned dynamic difficulty adjustments is systems like you would consider it AI, but the Nemesis system, where
Yeah.
the AI literally learns your play style. So when you're playing a game, not against a human that obviously learns really, really fast, but sometimes people don't like playing with other people, and that's fine. Where you can have a PvE experience and it actually be challenging enough. Because, I mean, back in the day when you played the computer, it took you 10 minutes and then you learned how to just steamroll it every single time.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even close to a challenge. There was rare exceptions on computer where it was, I think there was a game called Unreal Tournament, and the PC combatant was actually pretty challenging. But outside of that, it was very hit or miss, especially on consoles.
Yeah.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Don't do this to us.
I know we have like 15 more points we could talk about, but unfortunately, we are out of time.
So
Who was? It's my turn. Your turn.
it is your turn,
Just-
but we might do a continuation and try to focus on the things we didn't get to cover. I say might because I don't want to get skinned alive for promising something.
So you said you were going to talk about it. But
Yeah.
thank you for joining us for another episode of Gaming at the Round Table. It's brought to you by Alanites Media with Maverick, Crystal, and myself, Jojo.
Bye.
Later.
You have to stop.
Oh yeah, it's me.